Bob, can you compare and contrast 70s and early 80s George Gervin to Harden from a scoring / can you actually win a title if this is your best guy standpoint?
That's a very interesting one. The Ice was certainly, I was not the biggest fan of him either, but boy, now I look back at him with more fondness due to the nature of his game, which of course was more of a mid-range game. And then, that's an interesting one because remember they had multiple scorers. That was a very potent offensive team at different points in time. Wasn't. So that's a good one. I'd have to think about that. You've told me there. But
remember they're up 3-1 against the Bullets, and then Dandridge took the series over. But even in Game 7, they were up like 10 in the fourth quarter.
I was privileged to cover this. That was a while. The summer, spring of '79 was one of my finest memories of bouncing around. I'll tell you right now, and covering playoffs. So yes, I do remember that. We gave birth to one of my favorite Doug Moe lines. Doug Moe had explained what after having a 45-minute practice in the middle of the playoffs, he then say, my biggest concern is my golf club doesn't allow sixums on Thursdays.
Doug Moe,
never anything like Doug Moe, I can tell you right now. But anyway, very interesting one. I hadn't thought about the Iceman in the context of Harden because I know there's a contrast. Okay, no, there's no way. No, Iceman didn't have to have the ball dribbling it 15 times before he made a move. No, at all. I mean, the styles are really not quite the same. The thing about Iceman was the longest finger roll in history. I mean, he could finger roll from 8 feet. This is astonishing. And the lack of a fixed release point. He could release his shot. It must have been just so frustrating to guard because he could release his shot behind the head, over here, over there.
That's Durant. Like Durant does.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But he wasn't Durant's so smooth. The game just flows out of Durant. That's a little bit different category for me than the Iceman. But
is Durant the best scoring forward you've ever seen?
I'm just thinking on the top of my head. Right now, for a short period of time, about 2 or 3 periods, Bernard King was right there. The Bernard King of 84, 85, the Bernard King who went back-to-back 50s, the Bernard King who had the quickest release on the box I have ever seen. I called him Mazeroski. I mean, on the double play. Game 1, 1985, the Pistons and Knicks. Hubie versus Chuck Daly. Game 1 out of and Silverdome, right? Hubie Brown called Bernard King's number. Power right, 13 times in the first quarter, 13 consecutive times, and he got 22 points out of it.
Why don't coaches do that more, huh?
Potential 26. I mean, Bernard King. So in any discussion of great scorers in the history, we have to make an allowance for that, the moment, the window for Bernard King.
Yeah, that's a good one. He was the only non-Celtic that I really loved in the 80s, just because there wasn't anybody like him. And
he was great.
I think the thing with Durant that I think I had forgotten, just because we haven't seen him play basketball in a year and a half, is just how easy it is for him. And I was really worried. Is he going to be 90%? Yeah, it's just every decision he makes, and
he slows the game down. He's playing at a different speed than everybody else. That's what jumped out at me seeing him these first 2 to 3 games. Everybody else is going like this, and he's like, yeah, he can go fast, but he can he can do that 3-quarter pass that Kevin Love does so well. He can do so many different things, and he can shoot over you. He can take you in the post. He can shoot under you. And then he can draw a crowd and make the perfect pass under the pass. I mean, if he can stay healthy, all the preseason MVP, nobody's talking about Kevin Durant. Why weren't we?
I said it last week. He was 13-1, and it was like this guy. He's one of the 3 candidates. How is he 13-1?
Oh, that's right. You're a bettor. Did you put some money on that? I hope.
I'm not. I vote on it, so I'm not allowed to bet on it. But I was telling my friends, I was like, Durant's the best value. He should be 4-1. He's 13-1.
Yeah, that's a good bet.
Boston Globe last week, the day of the season open. One guy voted for Durant as MVP.
You? Oh, look at you.
Oh, wow.
See, there you go. So I want to if I can, I want to get back to Harden again for 1 second. And I'm just curious what you guys think about, because one of the nagging things about Harden for me aside from his obvious ability, is, and we know that he wears down at the end of the season. I mean, so that's easy. To me, it's easily fixable. You just play him less minutes and you do the rest that I was talking about before. But there does seem to be something about clutch situations. I'm not ready to say he can't perform in the clutch, but I feel like, and maybe it's like, I was at a game as a fan. I was at the game around Christmas time. I think it was a couple of years ago at the Garden, when Smart drew those 2 charges in a row, and he like completely threw the game away. Now, I know it was just a regular season game, but he got himself so worked up, he couldn't even make the right basketball play. And I'm wondering, is that something that you would, if you had Harden, would you worry about him closing the deal? Or do you manage
Zach
properly?
Lowe, I did a book of basketball pod with Zach Lowe last year, and he theorized that Harden, the comparison is actually Karl Malone, where he's your guy for the first 46 minutes, but do you trust him in the last 2? And this is, unfortunately for him, his legacy. He's one of the great offensive players ever, but over and over again in these playoff situations, Bob, what do you think?
Well, you mentioned, you pushed a button with me because I've many times said Karl Malone is the most overrated great player in NBA history. And I could name, I really did this, no longer. But when I was still working back in, I carried around in my pocket a list of 15 forwards I'd rather have than Karl Malone historically.
Give us number 14.
Oh my God, put that list on eBay.
Well, just give us number 14.
We mentioned one of them, Bernard King.
King, yeah.
But I went down, I don't know now. That was an ancient history.
McHale would have been one of them.
Of course, McHale, Barkley, Bob Pettit.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Come on, we can go on.
Well, before the previous generation, Elvin Hayes was the guy that you were always.
That's my bet. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It was my,
And George McGinnis was second.
I felt sorry. George was a waste. He was a squandered talent. With that body. He wasn't a bad guy. He was Anyway.
I remember Doug Collins would tell me about halftime. McGinnis just smoking a cig, getting ready for the second half, and he was just like this chiseled, amazing body. He was done by the time he was 30.
Yeah, he was done, and it was pathetic in the end because he wouldn't go to the basket because he didn't want to shoot free throws.
Antoine Walker-Ennis.
A lot of guys line that up.
It's true. Oh no, and yet you look at the numbers he put up, even his first couple of years in Philadelphia, and and he was still putting up huge numbers until that free throw thing and conditioning. Those 2 things got him in. Brought him down. But anyway, Harden isn't. It's kind of part of his package is that the playoff thing has been a letdown, and him. So I would have to answer your question. I would have some concerns.
So here's my follow-up. If you managed him differently, if you managed his minutes differently, if you gave him days off, if you took the ball out of his hands a little bit, would it change?
See, I don't
know the answer.
My answer to this is, I think in a 7-game series, it gets easier. It's almost like when the Red Sox would play Mariano Rivera 23 times in a year, and by the 19th game, they were kind of ready for the cutter, right?
Yeah.
They'd seen it a million times. Well, at least they kind of had some sort of a feel for it. But with the Harden
Bill
thing,
Miller was. I'll say that.
Yeah, Bill Murray, definitely.
Another one of Bob's guys.
But the Harden thing, it does seem like as the series goes along, it gets easier for the other team to figure out his style. Yeah. He has the ball so much.
He does.
I was there for the Clipper game when the Clippers self-combusted in Game 6, when Josh Smith and Corey Brewer brought the Rockets back. But Harden was so bad in that game and basically checked out in a way that I just can't forget it. He was on the bench with a towel on his head. He was completely checked out. He was sulking. He was mad.
Like LeBron back in the early 2000s against the Celtics. Yeah.
So that was a weird one for me. But I find it hard to believe you can win with that style. Nobody's done it yet with a guy who has the ball that much. Nobody's actually won the title that way.
Yeah, that's true. So you'd have to change the way he plays. But, I did a story on the Rockets the year after that when Paul came. Paul came to Houston. I did a cover story for the now dearly departed ESPN magazine. And Irv Rowley, you know that name? He worked with Harden and some of the other guys. And he was working with Harden that whole year. And he said people were actually calling him and saying, "Did your boy Harden throw the game?" Like people actually thought he threw the game. That's how bad he was. Now, of course, he didn't. I don't mean to suggest for a second that he did. Obviously, he did not. I can't be any clearer than that. But imagine people even thinking that.
Right, being so bad that people are like, what is going on with this guy?
Yeah, pretty crazy.
It's a weird one. I think Bob and I are aligned on Harden.
Yeah, see, you know me. I'm not. You guys are we. I'm still they. And I'm going to try to fight to the death. I've only got like 2 or 3 years left in my career, and I'm trying not to slip into the we thing. So that's why I'm playing devil's advocate here for you.
I'll give him this. He's had a very unusual career arc in that I can't think of anybody else who has attained the heights that he has, the 3 scoring titles, etc., and his, and the stature that he has, who started out where he started out in the pecking order on his team, which was a sub who was remember they traded him to keep Serge Ibaka.
Serge Ibaka, yeah.
Let's remember that. Not that there's anything wrong with Serge Ibaka, but he's never going down the street away. Harden will. But I'm saying, think about it. Look at how far he's come in esteem, and so he made it happen, right?
He works at it. He works at it.
I know he was the 5th pick in the draft, but still, the fact is, in Oklahoma City, he was a nice adjunct at first. And I don't know too many guys who take that extreme elite during the course of their time. Not too many.
Yeah, but at the time, we all knew that was a bad idea, though. That's not revisionist history. We all knew at the time it was a mistake to let Harden go. We did.
I lost my mind.
Yeah, I did too. I couldn't believe it. Well,
especially because they just could have kept him for like an extra $6 million.
It wasn't much money. Yeah, wasn't much money.
If you had to bet, where is James Harden in March? What team is he on? You could bet on any team.
Yeah.
So it's a given. You're saying it's a given that there will be another destination.
Yes, because I think once an NBA star is unhappy, it's almost like when a celebrity relationship, when it starts falling apart, they're going to break up.
I still got to believe it's Brooklyn in the clubhouse, leader in the club. I still got to believe that.
Interesting. I say Philly.
Yeah. See, Philly, it's just because Daryl Morey basically told the whole world that he saved his career. And they have the piece that would probably get it done in Simmons, So if Philly stumbles a bit, it absolutely could be Philly.
I would say the 3 wildcard teams would be Boston, we mentioned.
Yeah.
I think Denver could put together. Houston does like Porter Jr. Like there's no question.
Who wouldn't like Porter Jr.?
They could put together a Porter Jr., Gary Harris, a cajillion picks, whatever. And then I think Portland's the other one. Whether McCollum and Collins and Simons and more first rounds, whether that's enough. I mean, remember when we thought, remember with Jimmy Butler a couple years ago, we never expected he would get traded for Covington and Saric, and that would be the entire deal. But that's his stock fell because he sabotaged it.
Yeah,
and that's my fear with Harden.
But again, let's get back to what Danny Ainge said. Jimmy Butler would never be considered a elite. I mean, he was fantastic in the bubble, but again,